Okay, guys, thank you for being patient. I did it again. I screwed up another episode. No sound. Thank you, guys. I've seen your audio, your signal now for audio. I hope it's working now. Give me a thumbs up. Like I said, I'm really bad with computers. I hope you lip readers out there were able to see past this mic. Really sorry again. No sound. I'm keeping up with the tradition of messing up my intros. Really not on purpose. For those of you who think this is a gimmick, it's not. It's really 100% pure incompetence. My apologies. And I had all the green lights. I was missing one little green light and missed that one, guys. My apologies. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you for being patient through that intro. I hope it wasn't too much of a headache. I do have my cousin Sammy uploading these now to iTunes. And for those of you who have noticed, they go straight up on iTunes right away. Special thank you to my cousin Sammy. He's the one hooking us all up with these iTunes, and I'm sure he's going to edit out that long, awkward silence. But you're going to get the apology, so you guys will know that in this episode, I screw up another intro, messing up the sound. Okay, so what was I talking about? Okay, I was talking about a video that I posted, and I'm going to redo it again. I put up a video about jiu-jitsu versus wrestling, and it's a really popular video. Lots of comments on there. Mostly, it's got over 1,000 likes. A lot of you have liked this video, so I know to do more content like this in the future. But a small handful of you did not like this video. A lot of you thought it was I don't know. I think I got 17 dislikes. So 1,000 likes, 17 dislikes. I think that's a great ratio. But let's talk about that video. It's such a great video, I think, because it shows the two different arts. You know, it shows how they clash. That's why I did it. That's why I did that video. I'm always intrigued when I see two different grappling arts go head to head. Either it's judo versus Greco, freestyle versus jiu-jitsu, freestyle wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. All the different grappling arts. I'm always glued to the screen. And by the way, I'm the same way when it comes to striking styles. Like whenever I see taekwondo versus karate, I want to see how they clash. You know, because I practice really all the arts. You know, I have respect for all the arts. I think there's something good in every single art, every combat art. But there's something about the way that they clash with one another. And I'm fascinated by that. So I thought, hey, let me roll with one of these wrestlers we have in the gym. You know, he does 99% of his training is Greco-Roman and freestyle. He doesn't do much jiu-jitsu. And let's just film it. It'll be fun. And I think it was fun. A lot of you liked it. Okay, so let me play some of that video again. Let me see if I can get that going. There it is. Okay. So I'm not a total zero when it comes to button pushing, but I'm not very good either, right? Okay, so here we go. What was great about this video? Well, again, there was a clash of arts. Okay, so Greco, and of course he does some freestyle as well. You can see him working the single leg there. Okay, but I'm flowing into leg locks, and they're clashing. For sure, he's a better takedown artist. For sure, he's got a lot of experience with throws. Now, of course, it's not 100% fair because I've also been wrestling longer than him. You know, this is Johnny Yates. I trained with his father. Johnny Yates was probably like he's probably like 22 right now. So I mean, 10 years ago when he started, I was already wrestling before he even started. You know, I probably started close to the time where he was probably just not just born, but a few years after. Okay, so I'm a lot older than Johnny, and I have experience in wrestling too. But of course, he's a specialist in Greco. That's what he does all day long. So some of you didn't like that we started on the ground. We started on the ground to warm up, to break the ice a bit. But we do, in the second round, start standing up. Okay, now he scores one takedown, and I flow into a leg lock from there. And then after that, there are two more takedowns, but it's a guard pull from me. I kind of do like a Gary Tonin type guard pull, where you shoot in for a double leg and then slide into a heel hook. I find that works really well with wrestlers. Why? Because wrestlers are trained to sprawl. So it's a good counter to wrestling. And we've seen Paul Harris do it in high levels of MMA. He's submitted some very good wrestlers. Okay, John Fitch. I'm forgetting another one right now. His name slips my mind. But he's done it in UFC. He's done it in high pressure fights, high caliber fights against very good wrestlers. I find that is an excellent counter against wrestling. Shoot, and when they sprawl, pull into a leg lock. Don't pull to guard, pull into a leg lock. Now, I also discussed in this video that leg locks work really well against wrestlers. I find that if you do straight jiu-jitsu with no leg locks, you're going to have a much harder time with wrestlers. Wrestlers, in my opinion, the way that they counter takedowns and sweeps flows into leg locks. Quick note here, Dungeons and Masters. I don't know how you guys know it's my birthday. I really appreciate that. It is actually my birthday. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, guys. Very, very nice of you to remember. I have no idea how you guys would know this, but Takedown Breakdown, thank you very much for the birthday wishes. All of you out there wishing me a happy birthday, thank you very much. Highly appreciate it. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Yes, there's definitely some scenarios that if you're not used to wrestling with a wrestler, you might not be aware of how to go about it. Okay, so wrestling against a wrestler, grappling against a wrestler, in my opinion, I don't approach it the same way I would approach obviously grappling against a jiu-jitsu guy, a straight jiu-jitsu guy. Why? They have different reactions, totally different reactions. You know, jiu-jitsu guys, when you try to leg lock them, they're more going to spin. They're going to try to spin out of stuff, whereas the wrestler's going to try to sprawl. So you gotta experience it. You gotta mold your game around them. So that's definitely one topic. Okay, but the number one topic I think objection was jiu-jitsu is less effective in fighting than wrestling. And I thought we'd talk about this in at least for the first question and answer. People were saying, hey, what's more effective, wrestling or jiu-jitsu? No doubt about it. Easy answer to that is both. Okay, so I think 99% of us out there that do grappling or jiu-jitsu, we would agree that having both worlds is better. Having both wrestling and jiu-jitsu is better than just having either wrestling or just jiu-jitsu. Okay, so that's an easy one. I think most of us will agree. And the ones who disagree, I think, are out to lunch. They just probably don't have a lot of experience in fighting. However, you're always going to find somebody out there who's going to disagree, right? Okay, so besides both being having the both together, that's the best. Individually, which one is better? Or if you're going to master one over another, which one is better? Well, it's a bit of a trick question, okay? And I'll tell you why. If you master any art, if you master wrestling, judo, sambo, any grappling art whatsoever, in my opinion, you can very easily defend yourself. There's no question about it. Okay, so if you find yourself in a street altercation and you're a judo black belt, you're a sambo master, you're a freestyle or collegiate master, you're going to be able to defend yourself. Okay, for sure. Grappling arts for one-on-one self-defense, in my opinion, is the best. In my opinion, there's no better martial art, okay, than one of these grappling arts. However, jiu-jitsu is very different. It was developed very differently than wrestling. Wrestling was developed in a time-sensitive scenario. Okay, you have 3 rounds of 2 minutes, and you have to wrestle, and you're trying to accumulate points. It's a very brief bout between you and your opponent. Okay, you got about 6 minutes to work against one another. Okay, Jiu-jitsu was developed under Vale Tudo rules. Okay, Jiu-jitsu was developed in Vale Tudo. Vale Tudo, for those of you who are the younger guys who don't know, Vale Tudo was Portuguese for anything goes. Vale Tudo had no time limit. There was no time limit. Fights could last over an hour very easily. Fights can last 3-4 hours, 5 hours. Fights can last a very, very long time. Now, sometimes fights in Vale Tudo, and they're very well documented. Okay, for those of you who have never seen Gracie in Actions 1, Gracie in Actions 2, they highlight some very, very interesting bouts. Okay, there are many, many classic and famous bouts that lasted hours long, like 3, 4, 5 hours. In a bout like that, not having any finishing holds, okay, and of course Jiu-Jitsu is all about finishing holds. Wrestling is a little bit, it's not as effective as when you have 3 5-minute rounds like we have in the UFC, Bellator, 1FC. 3 5-minute rounds is far more advantageous for the wrestler. Why? Because I got to take you down and I just scored my points. I got dominance. I just got to control you for a little bit of time. Now, let's say me and you are fighting and after 90 seconds, somebody gets a takedown. Well, there's only about, 3 minutes on the clock. Maybe you take somebody down in 2 minutes or whatnot. There's not a lot of time for me to sub you. And if I get you in trouble, let's say everything goes well and, in that 3-minute period is a very brief period to be wrestling between 2 experts, grappling between 2 experts. I get you in a very dangerous position. I mount you. If the bell rings, you're safe. So in MMA, you not only have only to survive 5 minutes of grappling at most. Okay, imagine you were taken down the first few seconds. Not only do you only have you have an oasis. All you got to do is survive these 5 minutes. We're going to reset you. Okay, so you have that oasis in your mind. You have that safety net. All I got to do is survive. The other thing is they're going to start you back in the stand-up position. They're going to let you start all over. That's why I'm so against starting the fight back up on the feet. Like, for instance, if I take you down and I mount you and the round 1 ends, we should start and mount in round 2. We should start and mount. The state should never intervene in the bout. The state brought you back up to your feet. That should never happen. In my opinion, that should almost never happen. That should almost never happen unless there's a deliberate stalling on the part of one of the fighters. I think the bout should always be restarted exactly where it last ended, or as near as we can get it to that. In MMA, we start you back on your feet. If you get in trouble in MMA, and if you get somebody takes your back, all you got to do is hold that hand and stall and use all your might to hold that arm and defend the choke for 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever it is. In Vale Tudo, that wasn't the case. In Vale Tudo, you can stall all you want. You have to escape. Stalling will not win you this fight. So Jiu-Jitsu was developed under a completely different scenario. That's why if we had Vale Tudo fights, try to imagine, for instance, whatever bout you want, go back and look at any bout and imagine there was no time limit. Would the fight have ended up differently? And the answer is yes. The answer is just typically yes. 1, the fighters will come up with different strategies. 2, the fighters will obviously train differently. Obviously, they're going to be, in it for the long haul. And 3, I know, and I understand, guys, please don't lecture me on how it's logistically impossible, pay-per-view, sponsors. I get all that. I'm on board with all that. I'm just saying that the art of the sport, Jiu-Jitsu is not made, it still hasn't adapted, I should say, to the modern rules. And it is adapting very quickly. And we could talk about that later, because I believe that Jiu-Jitsu is quickly solving a lot of the problems it's facing now in the UFC octagon. And eventually, it'll go full circle, and Jiu-Jitsu guys will out-wrestle and out-maneuver and out-take down a lot of the wrestlers out there. Why? Because we're in Jiu-Jitsu is developing a lot of counters, and I'm gonna make a good point. I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but give me a minute. I'm gonna make a really good point. I think I am about to clarify that. Okay. Jiu-Jitsu now is coming up with a lot of different counters to single leg, double leg, body locks that are Jiu-Jitsu oriented that would be illegal in freestyle wrestling or collegiate wrestling. Okay, so there's going to be a lot more rolling to leg locks. There's going to be a lot more type of guillotines. Like guillotines have taken in the last, I would say, year and a half, has taken a major leap forward in Jiu-Jitsu. I don't think we've seen it yet in MMA yet. It's going to get there. It's circulating in the Jiu-Jitsu community, and it's trickling into the MMA world for sure. But guillotines, the guillotine game, especially the guillotine game that has come out of the Danaher camp, is light years ahead of what we used to do 2 years ago. Like there's been innovations, and these innovations are going to continue. And this shooting and pulling into leg locks that we see Gary Tonin doing, this is going to come, and we saw Paul Harris doing. This is going to come really quick. The next generations, I believe, are going to be doing a lot of this. And this is not countered by wrestling. It's not in the book of wrestling. Okay, this will be illegal in the book of wrestling. To pull guard, to shoot, pull, and leg lock will be illegal, obviously. But these things are coming down the way. They're coming down the way, and when they do, they're going to be very surprising. And fighters are going to have to adapt, and these adaptations are coming. In my opinion, they're coming. Jiu-Jitsu has to adapt to the 3-5 minute rule. They have to adapt to the 3-5 minute rule. They're still operating like it's no time limit. Now, a good example of this, a good point, and I told you guys I was going to try to make a good point, is let's look at submission only. Like the sub only. We've had now a beautiful sub only era, which I found very entertaining. I like very much. We've seen a lot of, EBI. We've seen a lot of great performances. We've seen a lot of great tournaments from EBI. And what did we see? We didn't see any wrestlers come in and dominate. We've seen grapplers use wrestling and dominate, but it always ended up to who had better grappling skills, jiu-jitsu skills. Wrestling didn't dominate, and wrestling so far in Abu Dhabi right now hasn't been dominating at all. It's all jiu-jitsu guys. There was a time in Abu Dhabi where people would come in, they score a double leg, stall, and they would win. Now they adapted the rules, people adapted strategies, and now you could see all the Abu Dhabi winners are mainly, all of them, jiu-jitsu experts. And in sub only, I can only think of one wrestler beating one really good jiu-jitsu guy, and that was Chad Mendes beat... He beat, oh my God, forgive me, I'm forgetting it. Glover. He beat Glover. Okay, now how did he beat Glover? He beat him in, He beat him in Shenzhen. So the whole match, he was running. Chad Mendes was running from Jeff Glover. He was just running, like literally just like, I got to get away from this guy. He was just completely doing whatever he can to disengage from Glover. Glover was obviously the superior submission artist, grappler, and Chad could take him down, but once he took him down, what could he do? He could just pull out and run. He just like completely defensive. And then they restarted them in the, for those of you who don't know, when you go in overtime, it's kind of like a shootout. I start on your back, then you start on my back, and whoever can sub the other one in the least amount of time wins. Glover subs Chad, and then it's Chad's turn, and Chad just puts the muscle on him. He just kind of squeezes his neck and chokes out Glover faster than Glover choked him out. Now, the event, the promoters put Chad on Glover's back. I personally don't think Chad could ever take Glover's back on his own. He could never kind of take him down, pass his guard, take back. Glover's just too good for that. However, under the rules, he was able to score submission. That's just the only one example I can come up with. And he won, yes, but he needed the rules. He played the rules in a very smart way. He wasn't, the better grappler. If we locked that cage and said, hey, nobody's coming out till somebody gets a sub, I really believe it would be Jeff Glover, get that win. If you cannot stall, Jiu-Jitsu takes a major leap forward. And I find that if we look really closely as well, whenever there's a jiu-jitsu expert versus a wrestling expert, it usually comes down to the striking. And typically, wrestlers are better strikers than jiu-jitsu guys. That's another observation I've made throughout the years. Typically speaking, like for instance, if we look at Damian Maia versus Kobe Covington, okay? Kobe, in my opinion, lost round one. He lost the striking in round one. He didn't get taken down. And he didn't take down Damian Maia. It was a pure striking affair. I found that Damian Maia had stunned him with the left hand. Go back and watch that fight. I thought Damian got round one. I think most people agreed. I think like 85% of people would agree. Round two, Kobe, he readjusts and he starts scoring. He defends the takedown, starts scoring. By round three, Kobe had him hurt bad. I think Kobe would finish him. If there was 5 rounds, I think Kobe would finish him. I think Kobe adjusted in rounds 4 and 5 and really came to life. And he did a fantastic job. However, it came down to striking. Why did it come down to striking? Well, typically, in my observation, wrestlers make for better strikers. Why? Because wrestlers train in a more efficient and intelligent manner than most jiu-jitsu schools. The majority of jiu-jitsu schools train in a way that is less effective than wrestlers. Why? I don't think we can find any wrestling program on the face of the earth that doesn't have a conditioning program embedded in it. Okay, they all do standing and ground. However, I can find you 1,001 jiu-jitsu schools where they do no wrestling, they do 0 stand-up, and there's no conditioning curriculum at all. Okay, now I know some schools don't operate that way. Tristar definitely doesn't operate that way. In Tristar, there's wrestling, there's conditioning. We train like wrestlers. Okay, we definitely train jiu-jitsu like wrestlers. However, jiu-jitsu academies are always going to be developing less athletic fighters. Like this young kid's going to go through 10 years of training at a certain academy, a jiu-jitsu academy. Then he's going to decide, I want to do MMA, and he's going to start training like an MMA fighter. However, a wrestler is going to go through high school wrestling. He's going to go through, college wrestling. He's going to be trained like an MMA fighter from day one. He's going to be doing neck bridges. He's going to be doing sprints. He's going to be doing all sorts of things to develop his athleticism. And that athleticism has to be developed in youth. In my opinion, that athleticism has to be developed in your youth. If it's not developed in your youth, man, you're going to be working overtime to develop your athleticism, the potential for your athleticism in your older age. In past 20, in my opinion, you're ready. It's going to be hard now for me to go back and turn the clock. Athleticism, in my opinion, world-class athleticism is typically, there might be a few freaks out there. However, it's typically done when you're very, very young. If you didn't play a lot of sports when you're very, very young, you're always going to be a bit awkward when you're older and when you're trying to learn a new sport. I always try to liken it to a language. Learning a language when you're older, you always have a kind of accent. It's very typical. You have a type of athletic accent. You're not fluid in your attacks and your motion. So that was my critique for that objection. You know, some people say, oh no, look at wrestling, it does so much better than MMA. Yes, because of time limit, because of the rules, the way things are structured. When I get a takedown, all I got to do is kind of hold you there, win the points, win the domination, and let you go, and then kind of circle around, and I scored my takedown. I just got to be very defensive. If I were to go on the wrestling mat and just be defensive minded, I could stop a lot of their takedowns if I am allowed to run around. And if every time I get partially taken down, all I got to do is hold on for a period of time, they're going to start me back up. I could play the rules. If the rules were structured in a way, I could break even with a wrestler who's much better than me. Much better than me. Now, of course, freestyle wrestling rules are very well designed to avoid all of this, okay? I'm just saying if the rules had a flaw, which I'm trying to say that MMA rules have a flaw. If wrestling rules had a flaw that I could exploit, I can go on the wrestling mat and make a match look a lot more close than it is. That guy's a much better wrestler than me, but because I'm running around, I'm being very defensive, I'm playing the rules, I can make it seem like his wrestling is not that effective. So that's my critique, you know. So if we were wrestling, and for those of you who don't know, I had a grappling event. I was doing pure BJJ. We locked the cage. Nobody can leave this cage until there's a sub. There are no judges. There are no rules. That's why we called it pure BJJ. And I know a lot of you guys ask me to bring it back. I'm going to try to bring it back. We've been talking about it in the gym. It's just a time issue. Okay. It's just really a time issue, but I eventually will bring it back. Okay. How many subs out of, I think the 20 episodes we did, every single one of them was a sub, and only one of them I had to edit because there was some boring parts. Only one. Okay. Why? Because the rest, the grapplers thought completely different. They're like, hey, imagine I locked in a wrestler with a BJJ guy, a BJJ expert with a wrestling expert. And I said, look, this cage is locked until somebody gets a sub. I guarantee you guys, that the vast majority of the wins would be Jiu-Jitsu guys. Now, if it's MMA, I would say it would be more balanced. Why? Because the ground and pound makes a big difference. Okay, ground and pound makes a big difference. It gives the guy on top an advantage. I really think that ground and pound makes a big difference. However, if I had unlimited time, I would react very differently to ground and pound as opposed to having a limited amount of time. So if somebody takes me down, I have to take a lot of risk to make something happen, to get offensive. If it was purely an MMA fight a Vale Tudo fight with no time limit, I would be very, very cautious for a ground and pound. I would put myself in a way that doesn't allow me to get hit. I would strategize very, very differently. Okay, so for those of you out there who are trying to say that jiu-jitsu is useless or whatnot, and you guys are crazy. It's just total craziness. Now, again, that's a very minor opinion. You know, I don't think vast majority of people understand the power of jiu-jitsu. And of course, you know, at the end of the day, this debate is almost mute because everybody should wrestle in jiu-jitsu. If you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner and your school doesn't teach wrestling, find a wrestling club and find 1 or 2 days a week to go and wrestle. Your jiu-jitsu will get stronger. I always tell my students that one of the most, you know, saddest things to see in martial arts is a guy who's really, really good jiu-jitsu, fantastic jiu-jitsu, but has zero ability of takedown. Like, I find it, what would you do if you're in a street altercation? Are you going to sit to guard? No, obviously not. So you're going to be standing up defenseless. You've been training for 20 years. You're a master of jiu-jitsu. But you don't even know how to body lock. You don't even know how to do a kosoto. You don't even know how to do a hip toss. Some jiu-jitsu black belts I've trained with, they know nothing, literally nothing. Like when they try to do takedowns, it looks amateurish. It's embarrassingly amateurish. You cannot be a grappling expert and have no takedowns. It's absurd. At least be a blue belt in wrestling. So if you're ever in a defensive street defense situation, you don't get your butt kicked, because you may get your butt kicked even though you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu if you have zero takedowns. It's just absurd. It's an absurd amount of a strategy to spend so much time learning how to do things on the ground, but then you didn't spend any time on how to bring somebody to your world. Just for me, it's crazy. And when I see guys pulling guard, like sometimes really good black belts, they're curious, they want to try the MMA, and they come in on the mat and they just literally, like, they look so beginner. However, they're studs on the ground, you know, and they come from academies that don't have any wrestling. Like, these guys literally have never tried wrestling. So they don't know what it is to shoot a double leg. They don't even know. They're curious. They come on the mat and it looks really crazy, especially in our day and age. We have too much evidence of the importance of wrestling. Just too much. Okay, guys, I got a couple of super chats. I hope I didn't ramble on for too long. Here is the first one. Coach Zahabi, Is it too late to develop biomechanics from scratch at 35, blue belt level jiu-jitsu, but zero wrestling? No, absolutely not. Learn wrestling. Wrestling is jiu-jitsu standing up. So enjoy it. Try to shift your paradigm here. Try to think of wrestling as jiu-jitsu standing up. If I do an arm drag standing up, it's the same as if I'm doing it from the ground. Like I do arm drag a lot from butterfly guard, and I do it a lot from standing up. Why would it change anything? I do duck under from butterfly guard. I should do duck under standing up. The mechanics are quite similar. Now, not all the moves are the same, obviously not, but there are double legs from butterfly guard. So, and sometimes when you're doing a sweep from butterfly guard, you end up standing up with a single leg. So, listen, I'm going to use my wrestling and flow into BJJ. So, if I'm wrestling a really good wrestler, like for instance in the video that I have posted, BJJ versus wrestling, I shoot a double leg on my opponent, on my partner. I pull into a leg lock. Why? Because he's going to sprawl. His sprawl is going to beat my double. However, I'm going to now switch into jiu-jitsu mode. That's why I really like watching Gary Tonin. I find that Gary Tonin really has an incredible blend. That's why I loved watching Paul Harris. Because Paul Harris, look at his fight against John Fitch. He caught a single leg on John Fitch. John Fitch was sprawling beautifully, defending beautifully. He pulled into leg lock. Paul Harris pulled him into leg lock. He mixed wrestling and jiu-jitsu. So if you're wrestling somebody who's been using wrestling his entire life, it's crazy to try to out-wrestle him. Use a hybrid. Use your boxing and wrestling together to out-wrestle him. Use your jiu-jitsu and wrestling together to out-wrestle him. Don't try to use pure wrestling. Then you're going into his world. Okay? So that's my answer to you. Definitely use wrestling, learn wrestling, but when you approach a wrestler, you're going to use a hybrid. You're not just going to use straight wrestling. All right, we got another super chat here. I don't know. Oh no, it's just a donation. Well, thank you, Brian. Master Pai Mei, brain damage and CTE is something that's very real in MMA. Does this ever concern you? Yes, actually, yes. Listen, I find that most athletes mess up their health in the practice room. I'm very big on safety in the practice room, even though we have injuries. I'm so strict on it that I'm like, how could I be this strict and still injuries happen? You know, it's just we got to be very careful with the mind, the brain. That's why people are always complaining to me about early stoppage, dude. If it's in question, if it can go either way, like for instance the Dillashaw stoppage, I didn't think it was so black and white. Like I've seen stoppages that I thought it was just early, like for instance the Jose Aldo stoppage just last weekend. I thought it was early. Okay, again, I'm trying to be conservative here. I thought it was early. I'm conservative towards the fighter's safety. I thought that Meikano was not that hurt, even though he was hurt. I thought it was early. However, the Dillashaw one where he dropped 3 times, if you watch the tape, I thought is gray. Okay, it's gray. And let's err on the side of caution why we want to see Dillashaw be healthy. Even though himself, I understand he wants to keep going. I get it. He's the fighter. The fighters should never be choosing. The fighters should never choose. They're not in a position to choose. For those of you who don't know, when you get your bell rung, you don't remember what happened. You are not in position to judge. Fighters always wake up from being knocked out. What happened? They don't have those last few seconds. They don't have them. So how could they judge? They're not there. They're not witness to what happened. So fighters cannot judge. Experts watching will have a difference of opinion. I heard some people say it was too early. I heard certain people say it was too late. I err on this caution on the side of health. Why? Exactly what you mentioned. CTE. I want to see these guys finish their career as healthy as possible. For me, that's my number one concern. For other people, it's like, hey, it's a title fight. He may never get a chance to get a double champ. What's double champ if you have health problems in the future? What does it mean? It means nothing. If your health is gone, these young fighters will realize how important it was for safety first. And look, the truth of the matter is sometimes in every sport there are deaths. It's rare. You know, you could be a runner and die. You know, like there's deaths in every sport. Okay, if you have maybe an abnormality in your heart, you don't know about it. You do a very intense type of sport and you die. You know, that's why there's pre-screening tests, etc. We're trying to weed that out, but things could always get through. Mistakes can always happen. Genetics play a role. Some people are predisposed to more danger than others. Whatever the case may be, whatever it may be, deaths will occur in everything. Okay. You can be walking down your stairs at home in the safety of your home and die. Okay, we're not going to live in a bubble. However, what's our number one concern? When a death is going to happen, we're going to go back and try to figure out, how to avoid it in the future. Of course, It's the worst case scenario. And then we're going to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should approach things this way. We get wiser, we get smarter. I always try to approach it from the perspective of health first. If it's gray, let the referee choose. And if he chose to err on the side of caution, I'm not going to complain. All right, so what else we got? We got some super chats. I want to do at least one amateur MMA fight. I have been doing BJJ for 2 years, and I'm looking to add striking. Should I start boxing school or straight to MMA striking at MMA school? 31, thank you. That's from Casey Woodsman. Listen, it doesn't matter to me if you start straight boxing or straight MMA striking. Personally, I like straight MMA striking. However, just find a sensible club. I find that boxing clubs, usually they just beat themselves to a pulp. Find yourself, if you're new to striking, find a friendly striking gym. I want you to have a soft landing. Like at Tristar, we have touch sparring. Monday nights is touch sparring. Wednesday night is touch sparring. Friday nights is touch sparring. You cannot spar at the pros unless you're competent. You have to come show us that you can take and give. You can spar with the more advanced guys. If you go straight from hot to cold, you can get your bell rung, you can get your jaw checked, you can get your ribs bruised. Like, ultimately speaking, that's my number one concern. Then if you give me a chance to choose between striking MMA and striking boxing, my second most important pick, I would go straight into striking MMA. Why? I do also boxing days, just boxing sparring. However, I like to start with MMA. Why? Because I find that the boxers dip and bob and weave too low. Like, for instance, a great example of that is Pico. Pico just had a loss, and he got caught in the dirty boxing. But he's very well trained in boxing, Western boxing, and he's very well trained in wrestling. However, the in betweens, if you see, every time he got finished, he's been finished twice now. It was the in betweens, like he got kneed, and then from the knee he got dropped and choked. Two things he doesn't see in his sports. He was born and raised in boxing, born and raised in wrestling, but he's too orthodox. One day he's gonna fight a guy who's a kicker. And his orthodox style is going to clash very badly with these kicks and very badly with elbows. He needs to do MMA striking only. He needs to get out of that mold. I find he's so much in his mold. When he got caught, it was kind of in a clinch. Now, there's clinching in boxing, but it's typically broken up right away by the referee or by in sparring. It's kind of considered a little bit dirty. It is considered dirty. So, for instance, if you put that guy he lost to in a boxing match with him, Pico would mop the floor with him. If that was a sparring, at the wild card boxing gym, in my opinion, Pico would hurt him bad and would be like, hey, this is a mismatch. However, in MMA, with the in-betweens, Pico is too orthodox. So I like to start you with the MMA and then go specific. Because I got guys in the gym that always get head kicked. Why? They started in boxing. They're so boxer. They're so orthodox boxer that I've been training them for years to try to not duck into a kick, to not eat a knee, to not eat a leg kick. They're prone to leg kicks. They're so orthodox that the day that they fight a kicker, they get crushed. They fight another puncher, they do great. They fight a kicker or a kneer or a guillotiner if they're really orthodox wrestlers. They're always getting guillotined. They're always getting tripped up. They score less striking. Like, for instance, they'll get outboxed by a guy who doesn't box as much as they do. Why? Because of the kicks to the legs, because of the knees to the body, the push kicks. It kills their game. So that's my opinion. Start with the general and have days where you just go boxing. Have days where you just do Muay Thai. That's fine. That's great. But start with the general. Try to get a taste of all the weapons, so you don't get too nestled in one type of limited type of fighting range. Because what happens one day you fight a guy who's just totally opposite of that range. Like he just never goes in that range, and he'll never let you in that range, and he'll just crush you. Okay. So, but safety first. Try to find a good, sensible gym. All right. Ishmael, thank you very much. What else we got here? We got lots of questions pouring in. Coach, my super chat. Did I miss one, my friend? Let me try to scan. Kenneth George, I did miss your super chat, my friend. Very, very sorry about that. Hey, Coach, how did Freddie Roach integrate boxing into MMA? What have you learned from that experience? Kenneth, I've worked with Freddie. For those of you who don't know, he's a great guy, good friend of mine, a guy I really enjoy working with. He's very open-minded. Look, he tells you, look, this is boxing. Whatever you guys are doing, the kneeing, the elbowing, that's your world. Here's what we do in boxing. He understands that his range is a particular aspect of MMA. It's not the global MMA. That's what I love working with him. I've worked with so many coaches that they think they can only see what their art is, and it's a bit frustrating. It is a bit frustrating. I'm telling you guys about that. It's a little bit frustrating, okay? sometimes I'm working with coaches that, okay, let's look at this scenario, okay? Imagine a fight, okay? You're fighting, and two fighters. Fighter A takes down fighter B. He passes his guard, mounts him, pounds him, hits him from the ground, arm bars him. The match is over. Fighter B comes up to you and he says, Coach, what did I do wrong? Why did this guy beat me? Well, the boxing coach is going to tell him, hey, you should have had more footwork and jabbed and kept him at a distance and circled. You have no footwork. That's why he was able to grab you. The Muay Thai coach is going to be like, hey, you should have clinched him, spun around, did a foot sweep, throw him on his back or knee him or elbow him on the way in. He's going to give you a Muay Thai answer. The wrestling coach is going to be like, hey, you don't know how to sprawl. That guy shot a double. You got to sprawl and front headlock him. The jiu-jitsu guy is going to tell you, hey, you have no guard. The guy passed your guard right away. He mounted you. You don't know any escapes. You don't know how to shrimp. Every coach is going to give you his medicine. You know, that great saying. And it's attributed to so many great characters. But they say, if all you have in your toolbox is a hammer, if you're a limited person, you only have it. If all you understand is the hammer, you see every problem as a nail. You see every problem as a nail. So that's where the MMA coach, in my opinion, has to step in. Because sometimes, well, of course, there's a question of level. And every coach is correct. Every coach, I could have used every single art to counter you. I could have literally used every single art. However, when you're building a game, you gotta sometimes cycle into like boxing. Okay, you're doing MMA, but you're really focusing on boxing now. Why? Because you see that as what's gonna unlock your truest potential. Maybe your problem is grappling. Maybe your problem is you're always getting caught in guillotines. Okay, we need to focus for the next 3 to 4 weeks on countering your guillotines, like countering guillotines. When I take somebody down, I gotta escape the guillotine. I cannot get guillotined no more. It's happening too often in practice. It's a weakness of mine. So we can go into this kind of thinking if we're an MMA coach, if we're somebody who does a lot of training in different arts. However, if you're a boxing coach, expect the boxing coach to give you a boxing-related answer. That's why it's so important to have an MMA coach. Like, for instance, if you're a boxing coach and you're training your fighter to fight a Machida, you don't know how to counter what Machida does. He's going to throw push kicks at your fighter. You don't know the counters to push kicks. That's where you got to say to your fighter, hey, that guy you're fighting, I saw he kicks a lot. Why don't you go ask that kicking coach, that Muay Thai coach, that karate coach, that MMA coach, what's the strategy for when he does that? Because he doesn't punch much. If you look at Machida, he doesn't punch. He only punches ones and twos. He doesn't punch a combination. He doesn't go to the body. He doesn't throw boxing punches per se. So you're drilling, countering, boxing. This guy ain't going to use boxing on you. He's not going to use boxing. He's going to kick to the head. He's going to fake a punch kick. He's going to fake a punch kick. He's going to fake a punch knee. He's going to do a punch and angle off at a karate angle. He's not going to do boxing stuff. So that's where an MMA coach is going to be like, hey, we got to figure out a different strategy. You're a boxer. How do you use your boxing against a karate guy? That's a question that boxers can't answer. They've never fought a karate guy. They've never dealt with these things. So that's why I like to tell guys, do MMA, have an MMA coach. Absolutely. But go wrestling in the wrestling club. Yes, go jiu-jitsu in the jiu-jitsu club. Go, work individually as well. However, make sure you have a global understanding. Because if you get too orthodox in one realm, you're going to get derailed quite quick. But again, that's what, Kenneth, to answer your question, I love about Freddie. He understands that. He understands that he's only one part of the whole pie. All right, what else we got here? All right. One guy here needs to get kicked out. Really weird that, it's probably like a 15-year-old kid here. Just wasting his time, trying to get attention. All right, back to what we were talking about here. What's the next question? That's what we're looking for. Assalamu alaikum, coach. Have you ever gotten tired watching MMA fights? That's from Abdul Rahman. Yes, of course, I get tired of watching MMA fights. Sometimes I just don't watch fights for a day or 2 or 3 days. For those of you that might not seem like a lot, but sometimes I need a break from it. Absolutely. That's why I have hobbies. I really believe that every human being should, I don't care if you're a chess expert or a doctor, you need something that you like to do on the side that gets you away from that. Just refresh your batteries and re-energize, Sometimes taking 2-3 days off, whatever you do, whatever you're focused on in life, it's worth 10 days of training. So if you're like, I don't know, if you're studying medicine really intensely, sometimes taking 2 or 3 days off and coming back fresh is like studying it's like the equivalent of having done 10 intensive days of study, like that leap you might have. sometimes taking a break can be a leap, because you come back, you're refreshed, you got fresh eyes again, you've had a time to connect dots, you've had a time to step back and get some perspective. And that happens often when you get your mind off things. You're just completely doing something opposite of what you were doing 24/7. So if you're studying martial arts, you're doing that 24/7, then you take a week off and you come back to it, you can have a breakthrough, Okay, we got another super chat here. Hey coach, is BJJ most effective in the street fight? Is it true that most fights end up on the ground? That's a very old school question. That's from Stelios. Stelios, yes, most street fights do end up on the ground. So I'm big on jiu-jitsu for self-defense. I'm a new purple belt and I'm stuck in a plateau. Any advice? That's from David MacLeod. David, what I would suggest is try to up your hours of training. Try to up your hours. If your body can take it, you want to train the body a lot without breaking it. That's really the secret of training. Train your body more. Like if you're in a plateau, you're going to maybe go through an intensive, maybe go do a seminar somewhere. I used to love doing seminars when I was doing BJJ. Well, I'm still doing BJJ. But I mean, I especially coming up to black belt, I did a lot of seminars. Every time there was a seminar somewhere, I would drive down, take a couple of guys with me from the gym. We'd go down. We did a lot of seminars. I've done a lot of seminars with guys we later fought. It's crazy to think, I've done a lot of seminars in my life, not as a teacher, as a student. And I thought it was very beneficial because I would come back to my gym and I have another flavor, another angle. I saw something out there. You got to go out there and learn what's out there. There are things going on out there. You have no idea. People are developing all sorts of different strategies and tactics. Go out there and get in touch with them. Okay. By the way, guys, for those of you who want to train at Tristar Gym, check out tsdorms@gmail.com. Send them an email. Tell them you want to come and train at Tristar. They're going to send you a quote. Let them know how many days you would stay, how long you would train. It's surprisingly affordable. Me and George, we're in the gym every single day. We are teaching all the time, every day. Very committed to the gym. So for those of you who want to train with us, come down. And by the way, guys, thank you all for those of you who are buying this shirt. I'm just going to give you guys a quick look. My favorite shirt. Check it up at jujiclub.com. It's $20 now in the continental US, including shipping. So it's really cheap, really inexpensive. Check it out. I love this shirt. I think you guys are going to like it. It's the first shirt on jujiclub.com. There are going to be many more coming this way. So slowly, we're going to keep adding. We're going to have a full line over time, and thank you all who are buying the shirts, supporting this channel. Super appreciated. And also on the quick note, for those of you watching the Super Bowl, let's talk about the Super Bowl real shortly. I had a great shock on the Super Bowl. Check this out. Tell me what you guys see here. Somebody sent me this pic. Tell me what you guys see here. You guys, are you hardcore fans of this channel? For those of you who watch this channel quite a bit, you're going to notice. What do you guys see here? Super Bowl champion. There's Belichick. What's in the background? timtam.com. Super Bowl champions. They use our device. They use timtam.tech. Excuse me, not .com. timtam.tech. The greatest, most high-powered deep tissue therapy device, most high-powered massager. There's two of them, and as you can see back there, they're labeled. From what I understand, because I made a few calls because I was really surprised that they did that. They have them in the background. The NFLers are using them, and for sure, it makes sense that they use them. I know all sorts of athletes. Obviously, they use them. I've never had an athlete try it and not freak out at how amazing it is. And I was like, why do they have that thing on them? And they're like, oh, they're labeling it. The players who have one were getting their massager stolen. The other players would come and walk off with them. So now they have a way of tracking the massagers. So I thought that was really interesting. And special thank you, of course, timtam.tech. They sponsor this channel. They make these episodes possible. They have the greatest deep tissue therapy device. If you're a serious athlete, if you're a CrossFitter, a hockey player, don't think about it. Just go buy one. They're half off now. Okay, they're $200. They're at $200 right now. The Tim Tams, they're selling like crazy. They're out there. I know we sold out many times, but however, now they're back in stock. Okay, so they're back in stock. They're shipping right away. Check it out. Make sure to pick up a Tim Tam. If you're a serious athlete, you train a lot, you will not regret it. I guarantee you guys, I put my name on it. It's a phenomenal device. You will not regret. All right, let's go. What else we got here? James Delaney, happy birthday to you, coach. That's a happy birthday for me, I believe. Guys, thank you very much. I'm gonna just do it one last time. Thank you, all of you, wishing me a happy birthday. 39 years old, believe it or not, 39 already. I'm almost in that midlife mark. So thank you all very much. Very, very appreciated. Anybody out there who sends me a birthday after this, I'm not going to respond, but I'm just going to give you a thank you in advance. Okay? Very appreciated. All right, what else we got here? Who's the most useful in MMA? Judo. We've answered this question way too many times. Wrestling or a mix? Kevin, go back and play this episode. I answered this already. It's definitely a mix. Mix is always the best. Quick note on the Super Bowl. You know, I watch it. I'm not a football expert, okay, by any means, but I used to play Pee-wee football. I was fascinated by football. I still love watching football. I don't have a lot of time to watch football. The only game I watched this season was the Super Bowl. I only caught the second half, so I got in on the game when it was 3-0 for the Patriots. But my quick comments on that game: superb game. It's such an incredible sport, radical game, and you know, just a strategy. I love what the commentators were saying, you know, why they're going for the field goal at the end. For those of you, obviously, you've all watched it. The Rams kicked the field goal. Why didn't they go for the Hail Mary right away? Why did they go for the field goal first? It's just such a well thought out sport. It's such a brilliant sport. And the way they drained the play clock so the Patriots cannot call an audible on the defense. I mean, what a strategic game. It's just such a brilliant game. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, man. It's just it's like two armies on the field right there. And I love NFL because I feel like the coaching is far more important than almost any other sport. Like a basketball game, things are happening too fast for you to kind of coach. You kind of intervene during the plays, you know. A lot of what you see the players do is improvise. It's in the moment. Like hockey, you know, the guy's improvising. He's reading the play right now. He's not listening to what his coach is saying. However, football literally stops after every play and they console the coach. And it's like, you know, the general is giving you our next step. So I admired for that because I find that the coaches are are generally more important than any other sport. Like for instance, me, when my fighters are sparring or fighting, you'll notice that I don't give a lot of real-time advice. So for instance, let's say they're trading, especially in the striking realm. I find that if the coach, you know, sometimes I work with other coaches, you know, and we have a difference of opinion. I believe that when you coach a fighter, and by the way, guys, if you haven't read, I know I've mentioned it before, if you haven't read The Inner Game of Tennis, get The Inner Game of Tennis. If you're an athlete, or I don't care if you play tennis or not, it's irrelevant. It could have been called the Inner Game of Mixed Martial Arts. It's irrelevant. Read that book. That's such a great book. It's a short book. It's an easy read. There's an audio as well. Get that book. I find that coaching sometimes you're just hurting your fighter. You're just hurting your athlete. You're injuring them by overcoaching. There is a such thing as overcoaching, especially in the striking realm, because when you're striking, things are happening too fast. My coach is telling me uppercut, kick. He's puppeteering. He's telling me what to do in real time. By the time I register what you're saying, the moment is gone. And not only that, the fighter, you're telegraphing now. Like, let's say I actually obey your command. And if you notice, most fighters, when the coach is telling him uppercut, kick, knee, elbow, like the fighter is completely trying to ignore him. Most fighters will not respond. They'll not obey. They'll not do what the coach says. So, in my opinion, you're just kind of slowing the fighter down and you're killing his creativity. When fighters land a good shot, like look at Anderson Silva. He's the master of surprise. He's gonna land a shot you didn't see coming, and that's why he's so great. You know, really, that's what it is. You know, I know it's cliche to quote Sun Tzu, but really, if you surprise your opponent, he's dead. I don't care if you know every defense there is in the book to armbar. If my armbar catches you by surprise, your defenses will not work. So creativity is a huge one. You know, I gotta make you look over here and hit you with this limb over there. You know, so creativity is huge. I feel like you're hampering your fighter's creativity, his imagination, his ability to surprise his opponent by just polluting his thoughts, but with your ideas. You know, your ideas out there. So, what I like to when I'm coaching my fighters, I like to coach them after the round or after the fight, or after the sparring. I'd be like, you know what? I would have tried this. I would have tried that. A lot of times when my fighter's fighting in real time, I'm giving him just suggestions, not really like trying to be overly controlling, because I find that if you're overly controlling, you're kill. Because the thing is, you know, sometimes I'll see one of my fighters spar with someone and I'll be like, you know, I think you should have done this. And then I go in there and spar with that guy and I'm like, you know what? I came up with a totally different solution. When I got in there, I got new data. And I find that coaches haven't been on the mat in a long time. They forget what it is to be on the mat. They have this perfect idea that they think would work so easily, and the fighter or the athlete just doesn't get it. He does get it. It's just your idea is not as good as you think it is. It's not as... My favorite coaches is, you have an idea? Can you please show us? Go ahead. And get on the mat and demonstrate. If you can demonstrate it, I have a greater respect for your coaching now. And I found that fighters that haven't done it in forever, the game has changed. What you remember, the way you see it, the game has changed. It's not working for your fighter for a variety of possible reasons. But if it's not working, I find the coaches kind of get down on the fighter a little bit. Whereas if you let that fighter kind of find his way, he'll be far more successful. So I believe that, every fighter, you should teach him the fundamentals. And after a while, you got to kind of let go and let him find the way he does things. Like, for instance, a great example is Eddie Bravo. Eddie Bravo did Jiu-Jitsu very differently than Machado. He trained under Carlos Machado. Two brilliant grapplers, two very different styles. I think that obviously Eddie Bravo didn't start off with rubber guard. He started off with the fundamentals. He learned armbar. He learned, triangle choke. He learned all sorts of stuff. And then he found, hey, you know what? My legs are very limber. I have this idea I want to try. And he developed it, and, he gave birth to the rubber guard. However, if his trainer was very strict on him, maybe the rubber guard would have never been invented. Maybe his style would have never been invented. So what are you doing when you're overly molding your students, when you're being too strict on them? You're trying to get them to fight exactly how you understand fighting. You might be snuffing out their creativity, their brilliance, So there's so many great examples of this. There's so many great trainers that would have done so poorly with a particular athlete. I don't want to name names, but I find that sometimes you have an athlete and a coach that just go so well together. And then you have an athlete and a coach that just are so polar opposite. The working together makes no sense. I hope that answers I hope that makes things more clear. All right, what else we got here? Okay. Yes, stuff gets stolen even at the Super Bowl. That's what I heard, because I was finding, why did they put those markers on them? And they're like, oh no, we got to keep track of whose massager is who. And these are not stainless steel massagers, okay? So you have stainless steel massagers you can disinfect. These ones are personalized. So you don't want to, it's plastic. It's a plastic tip. You can switch the tip out. You can have your own tips. However, some people are concerned, hey, touched my skin. I don't want to touch your skin. Some people are more I don't care. Me, I share my I don't really care. However, some people are more sensitive to that. With Pac's unorthodox style, Roach cultivated it. That's true. That Joe Stafford. That's a very, very good example. Joe Stafford says, with Pac-Man's, Manny Pacquiao's unorthodox style, Roach cultivated it. And I've worked with Freddie Roach. He's very open-minded about that. He understands not everybody fights like Mike Tyson. Not everybody fights like Roy Jones. You got to find your way. That's such a great example. Do you dislike John Kavanaugh? That's from Brandon Combs. No, not at all. It's quite the opposite. I have a great admiration for John, and as a coach and as a human being, I do not dislike him in the least. I actually like him very much. Coach, what's your favorite Lebanese dish? That's from Boo Rida. Boo. Great question. I love the shawarma. Yesterday I went to Amir. For those of you who don't know, we have a chain called Amir in Canada. I don't know if you guys have that in the US. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen an Amir in the US. It's kind of like the fast food for Middle Eastern food. And yesterday I had shawarma mixed, shish tawuk, shawarma, rice, garlic potato, hummus. Always, my friends, always tabbouleh. Always get a side of tabbouleh. If you don't get a side of tabbouleh, you are no apprentice of mine, my friends. You must get the tabbouleh. So you got the house salad, the rice, the garlic potatoes. Of course, you're going to get the garlic sauce. Don't be shy. Get the garlic sauce. It's going to make you stronger. It's going to make your jiu-jitsu better for sure. Your partners won't be able to breathe. As you're exhaling, the garlic sauce is going to fill the room. So for sure, 100% distract and lower the cardio and mental resilience of your partner. They will be in a weakened state temporarily, and you'll be able to subdue them with your jiu-jitsu. Garlic is extremely powerful. I go heavy on the garlic, my friend, heavy. And hummus and garlic together. So yesterday I enjoyed that. That was my one meal of the day. I do one meal of the day. I want to treat myself. Had garlic today. It's my birthday. So what am I going to have? For those of you who don't know, today it's going to be Indian food. I'm going to get butter chicken, the rice. Again, this is a birthday meal, guys. Okay, birthday meal. I'm fasting now. I'm going to train tonight. I'm going to train really like a lot. I'm going to probably do like 7-8 rounds, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. It's going to be a madhouse. I'm going to lose like probably like 5 pounds. I'm going to go to my favorite Indian restaurant. It's actually like a minute drive from my house, not even a minute. And I'm going to get the beef with potato. I forget the name of it. Butter chicken, rice, and naan bread. And that's going to be a very happy birthday dinner. Very, very happy birthday dinner. I'm going to enjoy that to an incredible extent. Kenneth asks, Dominic Cruz said interview that you should always drill technique at 100% speed and power because then it's the only way your brain will know how to do it. Do you agree with this? Yes and no. Yes and no. Okay, so Kenneth, I'm going to give you a quick answer. Let's say you're a beginner and I'm showing you double leg and you're doing it wrong. I'm going to slow it down. I always say, do it as fast as you can do it right. Do it as fast as you can do it right. So as you're doing it right, I'm going to ask you to do it faster. Right? Because sometimes when you try to do it fast, you skip 2-3 steps. You're getting it wrong. It's sloppy. Especially in jiu-jitsu. It looks weak. It looks bad. Okay? Also, maybe you're not warmed up. So let's start 60%, 70%. Again, we're talking about technique. We're not talking about sparring. We're talking about technique. Okay? So if I'm drilling duck under, I'm going to do it fast. Yes, I believe in doing it fast because in the fight, I'm going to do it fast. However, if I'm doing it wrong, that's when I ask my students to slow down, do it slowly. And then as he's doing it more and more right, I'm going to ask him to pick up speed. So as long as you're doing it correctly, technically correctly, I think speed is a great factor. Yes. However, always keeping in mind, I'm trying to avoid wear and tear as much as possible. Like guys, I'm 39 years old. I'm going to go wrestle today. I'm healthier than a lot of my students. Why? Because they grind their joints out like crazy. And then they wonder why their neck is hurting, their shoulder's hurting. Guys, keep your joints healthy. They have a limited amount of grinding. You know, you can grind your shoulder for 10 years, then you're like, oh, I'm really good at jiu-jitsu now, but I can't roll no more. What was the point of getting good at jiu-jitsu? You're finally good at it. You're finally smart. You finally know what to do. You finally know how to move. Oh, but I can't move no more. So that's why I always say, you know, I always roll like 85%, 90%, never 100, you know, between 70 and 90. Let's say 70 and 90. I fluctuate between there. But when I'm drilling, yes, I can develop speed with drilling. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's my partner's cooperating with me. He's moving. He's letting me work my technique, drilling technique. However, when I'm sparring, I never go 100%. You know, maybe we culminate. Let's say we're doing 10 rounds of, let's say, boxing sparring, Muay Thai sparring, whatever it is. The last 2-3 rounds, maybe we'll go hard, really hard. Like, let's hit it 95%, but never go 100%. 100% is only on fight night. Only, and not even on fight. I'm going to do that, like, sparingly throughout the fight because I never want to go literally 100%. What if I don't finish the guy? Then I need to go in recovery. So it's almost never good to go 100%. It's never good to go literally 100% in terms of fighting when you're actually in live combat. Number one reason why, it's injury. Number two reason, you won't be able to train as often. Okay, you won't be able to train as often. You won't get as many rounds in. You know, it's all about the secret to training is training the most amount possible while not getting injured. While having as little setbacks as possible. You know, I had an athlete getting ready for a fight, comes in sparring. I think it was the second training session. He kicks and breaks his foot, like injures his foot really badly. They had to go back home. Why do you kick 100%? Like when I throw a kick, I throw like 70, 80%. Why? Because I know that I might snag an elbow. I might snag a bone. I might hurt my foot. But the guy kicked like really hard, broke, like probably fractured a foot. About like his foot just swelled up. You just got to be sensible. You got to be smart. You know, injuries are injuries can really kill your skill level because they're gonna sideline you. And when you get injured, there's just some injuries you just can't work around, so you're sidelined. And how's that helping you? It's not. Okay, let's see here. What else we got? Dominic Cruz, pound for pound, most injured fighter. That's from Thierry Saint-Langlois. I would agree. He gets injured quite often. Yes, and no, I've spoken to him directly about his injuries once upon a time. We had a dialogue about his injuries. And you know what? It might make sense. But if you're drilling technique, you could do it in a very safe way. But that's a great point. Maybe he spars full out. I've never been in a sparring session with him. But you're right. He is a fighter that has been sidelined very often to training. What else we got here? Some people are texting me here about Brian Callen. I have no idea what that means. Let me just Google it real quick. Hopefully I'm not being trolled here. Let's see here. Brian Callen. Yes, I know he is. He's a friend of Rogan. He's been on the Rogan show many times. He does a podcast with He does also his MMA podcast, right? With Brandon Schaub. Okay, so I think you guys are just goofing off in the chat room. What else we got here? Those are trolls. Thank you, Ling. Appreciate that. I'm not very up to date with what's going on online. You know, I'm very weak. My only thing is like a YouTube and a little bit of Twitter. I don't really go too much online, but I do like YouTube. I watch YouTube. I follow a bunch of people on YouTube. I like YouTube. It's far more easy for me. Coach, why don't you compete in BJJ? You know what? I would love to compete in BJJ, but I trained so many fighters that I felt like if I did a training camp for myself, I would have to focus. And like, let's say I did a BJJ match, which I would love to do one day. I would love, be honest with you all. I would love to do an MMA match, MMA fight. I would like to do a BJJ. I would like to do an MMA fight. I would like to do a striking fight as well. It's just that I'm training so many fighters, and I had to ask myself one day, am I a coach or am I a competitor? I said to myself, look, I'm so deep in the coaching. I'm a coach. I won't do both. If I do both, I'll let down my fighters and let down myself. If I went in full in competing, let's say I said, you know what, I'm going to go full competing. I think that would be tough for a lot of the fighters that I'm training. I think they would need more attention. It would probably dissolve. I need another head trainer. I need somebody that everybody would be happy with. Let's say I brought in a guy who's a great expert. I'm like, guys, this guy's training us from now on. I'm now an athlete. Like, that's possible. It's conceivable. However, I wouldn't fight or compete until I had somebody take my place who could do a better job than me or as good, or a team of guys maybe. Okay, and of course I'd have to be worth it for me financially, because for me to change career to do what I'm doing now, what I make now, what I do, how I earn a living now, am I gonna take my life, take my whole family life, put it on hold, tell hey everybody we're lowering our standard of living because I want to compete in BJJ. And in BJJ, they don't pay, or MMA, the first few fights, you don't get paid much. Am I going to lower everybody that depends on me? Am I going to lower their lifestyle? Am I going to start, what am I going to do? Sell my house so I can live the next 2-3 years doing MMA and live off my MMA paychecks? Whatever that may be. It's not much. You have to start at the bottom. Well, I don't think, obviously I'm more well-known. I have a following online or whatnot. I wouldn't start so bottom, but it ain't big bucks either. Okay, it wouldn't be big bucks either. Now, if I ever had an opportunity to do a mega fight for whatever, let's say I ever fell in my lap, like this is a big fight, it's financially secure, I could conceivably tell my athletes, hey, I'm doing a 3-month training camp and I'm making so much money that I'm hiring these 5 trainers. They're going to be in my place for 3 months. That would be doable. That way the gym would keep running. I'd maybe hire a few black belts, a few extra boxing coaches, an MMA guy, somebody everybody's comfortable with, maybe a few key athletes could help me out. They're not fighting anytime soon. It could be worked out, but it'd have to be something worth it to move all those pieces. And the market's just not there. But if in the future it were to happen, I would entertain the idea, definitely. What else we got here? Thoughts on marijuana? Does it make fighters lazy? That's from Eric. You know what? I don't know. I don't have any experience with marijuana. Like, the honest truth is, when I was a kid, I tried it, and it didn't like blow my mind, but it wasn't anything like I felt like I don't even really know what it is, to be honest with you. So I don't even understand, like I don't even know if it took effect on me. I can't even really remember what it does. I just remember not being, when I was much younger, I tried it and it wasn't like, it didn't blow my socks off, let's just say. And I'm not sure, I'm sure guys in my gym do it. Like I know for a fact they do it. And it's just a non-topic for us. I know fighters do it here and there, not necessarily big name fighters or just people who train and come in. And sometimes I smell it on them. Last night I was rolling with somebody and I'm sure he had done it within the last few hours. I was sure. Whatever. It's just a non-topic for me. Was he lazier than usual? No, I wouldn't say he was lazier than usual. No, I wouldn't say he was lazier than usual. It was quite a normal role for us. For us, you should try DMT. That's from Venom Musk. I'm not even sure what DMT is. I'm not even sure what that is. I think DMT, I think that's like a psychedelic, right? Again, let me Google that before I put my foot in my mouth more than I just did. DMT. Yeah, psychedelic that is found in the human body. Now listen. I've heard people describe psychedelic states. And I'll tell you something. It's funny because that description says it's something found in the human brain. You can get there on your own. Guys, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you think deeply enough about something, if you think long enough, I should say, after the first 10 years of contemplation, after 10 years of intensive contemplation, you can trigger this on your own. You can trigger this on your own. You don't need a drug. And I know these drugs come with side effects. I assume they come with side effects. I know some of you are going to jump on me now and say there are no side effects. I have to do some research on that. So let me take that back for those of you experts out there. Okay. I don't know if there are side effects, but for me, like in my mind, I'd have to do more research, but maybe there's a danger. Let's put maybe now. I have to do more research. Okay. But if it's naturally occurring in my body and I know how to naturally induce this in my mind, in my body, why would I take a foreign substance? What would be the need for that? You know, so if you look at somebody who, if you look at somebody who's on DMT, the way that they talk, the way that one time I watched a documentary on somebody taking psychedelics, and they were talking about, and they were writing poetry, and they were writing stuff that's so deep, because when they're on psychedelics, they don't have access to this part of their brain other than when they're on this drug, and they were writing things that are very profound that I won't repeat here, but things that are super profound, things that might seem like a bit weird to us in the sober state, but if you're on the psychedelic drug, it makes total sense. Now listen to me. If you get to the level of mysticism, that's all it is, and we don't need the drug. You don't need this drug. You can get to that level in your mind. Now the problem with getting to that level is listen, there are levels of skepticism. Okay? There are levels of skepticism. Now, let's take the level of skepticism of the scientific method. That's a very high level for most people. Already, it's more than the majority of people can think at this level. But there are higher levels, even higher. You know, if you go higher to Thomas Kuhn, a philosopher of science, a physicist himself, and a philosopher of science. So he's a physicist and a philosopher. Then you go even higher. You can go to the level of a David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Ghazali, and Ibn Arabi. Now you're reaching the level of idealism. Above idealism, even higher, you get to the level of mystics. Now, the level of doubt that you have to practice, of skepticism, is too high for most people psychologically. Once you start questioning things that they've trusted for so long, like for instance, Immanuel Kant. For those of you who don't know, people don't read Immanuel Kant. Okay, only experts, only professional philosophers read Immanuel Kant. Now, for those of you who study Immanuel Kant, you know exactly what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, for those of you who don't know, also I study philosophy. I graduated in philosophy. Immanuel Kant is so dangerous to read. One of his peers closed the book halfway, and he said to him, I stopped reading. And Emmanuel asked him why, and he said, because I feared I would lose my mind. I feared I would go crazy. I feared losing my mind. It's a very well known anecdote in philosophy. Okay, because when you study when you study Immanuel Kant, a lot of things are brought into question. A lot of things are cross-examined and kind of disappear out of your hand. Okay, so you're holding something you've believed your entire life, and all of a sudden it's kind of trickling away. But you're so sure of this thing. Okay. Now, a lot of people also call this Cartesian doubt. For those of you not familiar with René Descartes, a great philosopher. René Descartes was kind of knocking on a door, a level of skepticism so intense, they named it after him. They called it Cartesian doubt. Now, Descartes was not the first thinker to go to this level of doubt. But the truest skeptics, they go so far that eventually the whole world kind of like dissolves. Okay, and not only is the whole world dissolved, but even the things you know about yourself dissolve. Let me give you a quick little, for instance. I don't want to leave it up there in a weird type of explanation. Let's give it a more tangible example. So, for instance, let's say we're measuring. Like I'll give you guys the measuring stick problem. Okay, the measuring stick problem. Now, this is a very well-known paradox, and it's quite well understood, and it's talked about quite a bit. But I think it gives you a step towards this line of thinking. So, for instance, I'm measuring a seashore. Okay, we're going to measure a seashore. We're going from point A to point B. Now, the seashore has jagged edges. I believe I've mentioned this in the past. It has jagged edges. I'm going to use a measuring tool. Okay, the first measuring tool is going to be a 1 meter stick. You take that 1 meter stick and you're laying it over itself, and you're going to measure from point A to point B, and you're measuring the wavy line of the seashore. Now, once you've measured the seashore, you've come up to, it measures about 10 kilometers. Now, I give you a more precise tool. I give you a 30 centimeter ruler. Now, that 30 centimeter ruler is more precise. It's going to get into the little crooks and crannies a little bit more precisely. So once you measure the seashore, now you're going to get to 15 kilometers. You're more precise with your measurement. The tool I gave you is even more precise. Now I'm going to give you a third tool. I'm going to give you a 1 meter wheel. Now this wheel, every time it does a revolution, it equates to 1 meter. So now you're going to walk this 1 meter wheel across the entire point A to point B line that you wanted to measure. Now the surface area is very small, so it's getting in the nooks and crannies even tighter. And now the seashore measures 20 kilometers. So we started 10, then 15, then 20. Now I'm going to give you another wheel, but this one's 1/100th of a millimeter. It's a really, really tiny wheel. You can't even see it with your own eyes. This one's so small, it's going in between the grains of sand even. Now the seashore is 100 kilometers long. We can get infinitely precise. So when I ask you, what's the distance between A and B? How long is the seashore? The answer is going to be, depends on what objective tool. Are we using the 1 meter stick? Are we using the 1 meter wheel? Are we using the 30 centimeter stick? What measuring tool have we agreed upon? And this is the heart of sophistry. Gorgias famously said, man is the measure of all things. Now, I'm very important to understand. I'm not a believer that everything is subjective. I believe there are things that are objective, what we call absolute objectivity. Something that is objective, whether you believe it or not, it is true. Regardless if you choose to believe it or not, it's not subject to the measuring stick problem. There are things that are not subject to the measuring stick problem. However, the majority of things in the world, and when I tell you the majority, I'm talking about we're high in the 99 percentile. Okay, we're in the 90 percentile. Okay, fall victim to the measuring stick problem. That's why you have this phenomenon called postmodernism, or everything. The kids today, everything is subjective, man. Am I a boy or a girl? That's subjective. My gender is subjective. My sex and gender is not the same. And you have this postmodern era. Now, sometimes people mistaken me for postmodernist. I am not a postmodernist. I'm the total opposite. I believe that things are objective. My question to everyone out there is, how do we convince the postmodernists? That's why sometimes I sympathize with their position. What I'm doing is I'm trying to tell you, look, this is their argument. Somebody give me a good answer to this argument. And the truth of the matter is, most traditionalists, like I hear a lot of talk, like for instance, there's a really smart guy. His name is Ben Shapiro. Very smart guy. Very smart guy. However, he does not understand postmodernism. He does not understand the measuring stick problem. He does not understand sophistry. Now, for those of you who know, this topic is not new. We call it postmodern. Forget postmodernism. Socrates and the sophists had this battle out 2,000 years ago, over 2,000 years ago. And from then till today, we're having this battle. People who believe in objectivity and people who believe that everything is subjective. Now, I believe that the majority of the world is subjective, but I do believe there are things out there that are objective and we cannot argue against them. However, there are a few great minds that have been able to prove this, and they have proven it. Okay, there are a few great minds throughout the era that have proven there is absolute objectivity. However, I haven't heard a lot of the great famous YouTube guys prove it. And a great example of that is a great conversation that happened once between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson. Such a great conversation. Jordan Peterson was taking the position that, hey, things are true enough. Things are just true enough. There's not really 100% objectivity in anything. And Sam Harris was really good. I felt like he was getting really upset. And he was like, hey, how could you say that? There is either an odd number of hairs on your head or an even number of hairs on your head. And I think that this is a classic debate. Guys, for those of you who have never read Plato's Gorgias, the book Gorgias, it's a great book. Read it if you're interested on this topic. I didn't feel that the Harris Peterson dialogue actually had a good ending. It had a bit of a questionable ending. But at the end of the day, it was this. Harris is taking the correspondence theory. Correspondence theory says, look, this cup is on the table. That's a claim. That's a claim you're making. That's your premise. Let me go see out in the world. Does it correspond to the world? Yes, the cup is on that table. Okay, that's it. We don't argue anymore. Is it true or not? We don't argue anymore. We went and we verified it empirically. It corresponds to reality. Whatever corresponds to reality, that's it. It's true. Now, Descartes' objection was, hey, first of all, you thought many things in the past were true because they corresponded to your experience and they were not true. So he gives a great example. He gives a very typical example. He says, look, when I put a straw in water, it bends because of the light. The light waves are bending. Therefore, it gives the illusion that the straw is bending. That's one example. Now, we can explain it away. Of course we can. But he's saying, look, let's go from that example. And then he takes you to another example and another example. And we have many, many, many scientific revolutions throughout history we can point to. That was the whole point of Thomas Kuhn's book, The Scientific Revolution. We go through paradigms. We are always subject to today's paradigms. Now, this is a very controversial point because a lot of people just don't want to accept this, but there's an incredible amount of body of evidence. You could just be subject to some type of paradigm, and that's why you believe that what is true is currently corresponding to your experience. Anyways, this is a debate that's pretty long and exhaustive. However, I don't find that a lot of the personalities today, they truly understand subjectivity. Postmodernists today, the people who are talking about gender now, they're not people that are rural. They're not rural citizens of the United States. These are people that come from the universities. It's actually the most educated crowd. They've studied, their history, their science, their philosophy, and they're coming to the realization that things are very, very subjective, more subjective than most people understand. I personally disagree with them. I'm here telling you I disagree with them. I'm just saying that the people who are alongside of me that disagree with them don't come up with a lot of good points. They don't. I listen really hard, and I can't wait for somebody to prove to me that gender is not a social construct. I can't wait to that day. Because if one of my sons, God forbid, came up to me and told me, hey, Dad, I feel like I'm a girl, I would really be upset. Now, a lot of you guys, please don't take this personal. If you're a biological man and you feel like you're a girl, that's your business. I'm not gonna, I'm not the type of guy to get in your business. I'll be like, that's your business. Okay. Me personally, I want to have grandkids. I'm telling you guys straight up. Okay. I really put a lot of time and energy in my progeny. I'm raising my kids to be good, healthy human beings with a good head on their shoulders. I spent a lot of time and energy, and I sacrificed a lot of my life so that one day my kids can do what I did, which is have children and raise them. And that progeny, that line, people always talk to me about, they want to, people say, oh, we want to keep our culture alive. That's how you keep your culture alive. Not by excluding other people, not by building walls, I'm not against building walls, guys, by the way. I'm not pro illegal immigration. Don't read too deep into that. I'm saying that the truth is, your culture is in your hands. I have friends of mine, they say, oh, what about our... Because for those of you who know, in Quebec, we had a major issue in Quebec 20 years ago. The French people in this country were very adamant about keeping their culture. And I love French culture. My wife is French. I enjoy French culture. But like all other cultures before it, it's going to dilute. Today, we don't speak Latin. It's been diluted. If you want your culture to flourish, if you're come from a particular culture and you want it to flourish, you better have a bunch of kids and you better have taught them your culture. That's the only way cultures flourish. That's the only way. If you care enough and your wife cares enough, your culture will continue to flourish. It's when people don't care about their culture anymore. They're marrying outside of their culture. Look, I married outside of my culture. I don't care if my kids are not pure Lebanese. I'm Lebanese. My parents were Lebanese, but I grew up in Quebec culture. I know more about French culture than I know about Lebanese culture. I was not integrated in Lebanese culture. Most of my friends growing up, I was raised more with Greeks and more with French people. So I learned more about their culture. I'm immersed in it. So I don't find I don't have that much sensitivity to, I'm not so hung up on my culture. However, I do want my kids to pass down our values, the family values, our values that we have, being a good person, just so many things that we teach them about life, that I learned from my family. And that I want to pass on definitely. However, I'm doing that. It's manual labor. It's work. It's not going on the internet saying, oh, this culture is invading. That's all BS. You're putting the power in their hands. Those people are always going to be there. They're always going to be there. The truth of the matter is, it comes down to, hey, are you propagating your culture? Did you marry a girl? If you have such values you want to pass down, for goodness sakes, find a woman that mirrors your values and procreate, have children, and teach them your values. But they always do the opposite. A lot of these belly achers, not all of them, of course, but a lot of these belly achers, they marry a woman that's completely opposite to their values. They get divorced after one kid. Their kid is completely, he's a byproduct of divorce. He's angry or whatnot. A very typical scenario. Not all children of divorce, but it's a common scenario that The kids compete for the child's affection. The kid kind of becomes a little bit out of control because the parents are at his mercy, because they both want them. Both parents want to be accepted by the child. And the truth of the matter is, I train a lot of these kids, and they crave discipline. They come from a broken home. They crave discipline. It's funny how so many parents, they come up to me and tell me, my son listens to you. He doesn't listen to anybody else. Like at home, he's a total mess. In the dojo, I don't even recognize him. He just does exactly what you tell him. He speaks to you with utmost respect. And there's a different power dynamic. There's a different power dynamic between me and your son and you and your son. That's why I find that people who want to propagate their culture, they want to propagate their values, they want to propagate, they want their progeny to continue. They have to be united parents. Then there's a different dynamic. There's a different power dynamic between two united parents and two divided parents and their child. So back to what I was saying, the DMT thing. This all comes from DMT. You have DMT already in your mind. Maybe they're saying the little drug, but you can access this, but it takes 10 years of deep study, deep thought, deep pontification, deep thinking. What else we got here? What else we got here? Some good comments here. Too many parents want to be their children's friends first. That's from Irish Deplorable. Irish Deplorable, my good friend. So you called yourself Irish Deplorable. I agree with you. I agree with you that too many parents are friends, but a lot of them, I think, they hit that point also after the divorce. Because I know that 90% of my audience out there is like all young men. Okay, so YouTube gives us like the graphs. We know like I got a little team going on here. We know who's listening from where and what age demographic, obviously, and a lot of you are young men. And if you've trained at Tristar Gym, you might have seen me many times run a long practice, teach a bunch of technique before and after, wrestle really hard, and then late at night, for those hanging out, we're talking about don't get married to a particular type of woman. Because why? My audience is young men. Now, if I had an audience of young women, you'd probably hear me talking about don't get married to certain type of individuals, certain men. Okay, because I don't want to favor male or female here. Okay, please. If I had a male audience, if I had a female audience, I'd be giving a long lecture of what type of guy you should never marry. But I'm going to give you guys a small little lecture on what type of girl you should never marry. Because as a trainer, and other trainers out there, you know this. How many times have you had a guy with a lot of potential get involved with a girl, then he disappears for a year, comes back fatter than he was when he left, and he's squandered his 2 years of training, and you ask him why, you're like, oh, I got wrapped up in this relationship, I wish I never left the gym, and now I'm back in the gym trying to recoup the 2 years, and now he's kind of like, he's kind of lost some prime years. How often do we see that? Like athletes are so often derailed by relationships. Like guys with real great potential. I'm sure it's hard for me to give you a concrete example. I'm sure there are guys who would have been world champion if they hadn't met a certain type of girl. They would have made it all the way to the top. They would have became world champion. However, they were derailed. They were derailed by some girl that they met, and that girl kind of got in his head, and this is such a typical scenario. Like, for instance, for those of you who don't know, it happened quite famously to Bonaparte. Excuse me, the great French conqueror, of course, Bonaparte. Josephine was in love with Josephine. While he was out in war, she was cheating on him, and he came back home, and he had a 3-day hiatus, from what I remember correctly, from what I read. 3 days, the wars are going on. Generals are trying to contact him, asking him for input. He was 3 days in the house with Josephine, having it out with her, that she had cheated on him or whatnot. And he took her back. And now a lot of you probably like, hey, that's weak, Bonaparte. That was really weak. And I would agree with you. He's out there risking his life, literally making decisions in an emotional state. There's some critiques about Bonaparte saying that he made some bad decisions because he was thinking about what's going on back home. A woman can get in your mind. She can completely derail you. And these young kids, the first time they fall in love, the first time they meet a woman, they don't know what the hell they're doing. It's normal, right? Everybody goes to that stage where they get burned, and then if you get burned, you're a little bit wiser. However, relationships today in the West, like sometimes I see a young fighter, he brings, with him a certain type of girl, especially in the West now, in Europe, the women now, they're not ready for marriage. The men now are not ready for marriage. Like, they're too immature. The relationships today, like the way they are, I'm from Generation X, okay? I would maybe qualify on paper for being a millennial, but I'm definitely not, in my mind, a millennial. And I'm from the MTV generation, okay, where things were bad, but not as bad relationship-wise. Not as bad. Today, I find that these kids are far more immature, not ready for being married. And what happens, they get involved with this girl, they get her pregnant, their whole career is sidelined. And it has a lot to do with the behaviors today. The norms today are incompatible with marriage. They're just incompatible. These young fighters, they fall in love with a girl, they get her married, and now she's out, she's on a vacation by herself, and he's in the gym, he's like kind of losing his mind, and he's thinking to himself, hey, she may be meeting a guy the same way I met her, and it's kind of gets in their heads, and then obviously they get a divorce, and divorce kills people's motivation, and it derails them, and then you have children problem, and this can completely, in my opinion, derails a lot of young athletes, a lot, and young careers. Financially speaking, later on, they're tied to these duties. They have to pay this amount. Now the guy's got to find a job. I've seen it so many times that I find myself, when I see a young kid with potential, I'm like, hey, you be careful. Establish your career. Get yourself a good girl that matches and is harmonious with your career, that is not going to derail all your training, that's not going to derail all your potential. And this could be true for a med student, for a engineer, a young up-and-coming engineer. When you find the particular other, your significant other or whatnot, make sure that they're compatible with your lifestyle, your expectations. A great example, thank God, is my wife. And I met my wife very young, and I was very straight with my wife. I told her, look, if you want to be with me, you have to be in this particular way. If you're not this particular way, go your own way. That was very strong, because growing up, especially with my father as my role model, my father was very, how should I say, he wasn't an emotional guy. Like, emotions didn't have anything to do with his decisions. He was a very practical guy. He wasn't type of if you were like in our, it was okay, like maybe in our family, or at least within his brothers, we kind of make fun of you a little bit if you're too romantic. We kind of make fun of you if you're on your knees too much. When we'd see it as a girl is going to get turned off, guys who grovel too much for a woman. By the way, in the West, I think men are so encouraged to grovel to women. So polluted, like in Hollywood media, social media, like, it's just too much. You're trying to put the woman up here, and you got to be down there, and you got to beg her for attention. That's just the worst. I find that's the worst. You're giving young men really bad advice. Really bad advice. Women are not attracted to guys who grovel. Like, just be more sensible, more balanced. More balance is a good word. But back to what I was saying. So many young careers, so much great potential sidelined because of the incompatibility with their training and the relationship. So I often have a running joke when the guys come in and I haven't seen them for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and they come in all chubby. I sometimes tell them, stop. Let me guess. You broke up. He's like, yeah, we broke up. Exactly. Because relationships typically last about 2 to 3 years. There's a good reason for that, by the way. But anyway, I'll talk about that another day. The guys come in overweight. Very typical guys. I've been in the gym for almost 20 years, literally. I've seen this scenario. It's almost comical. We laugh in the gym. We laugh. Let me guess. You guys broke up. Yeah, we broke up. Okay, now you're back to me, right? And she used to like you because you were trained and you were fit. A lot of you guys hearing this are going to be nodding your head. When you were fit and you were training and you were a little bit too busy, not too busy, but busy enough that your attention wasn't plentiful. Your time was scarce. She had to compete with your time for your time. She had to entice you to give up some time. Once you give up training and you give up this and you give up that, and your time is abundant, the value of your time now is minimized. She has so much of your time, she actually doesn't want it anymore. She used to want it. Now she doesn't want it. You're not training anymore, so you're less fit. You're less confident. You're less attractive. It's a slippery slope. One domino hits the next. That's why I always tell guys, hey, when guys I see them maybe missing practice, Or, and I'm like, hey, I know they're in a relationship. I'm like, hey, don't forget, when she met you, you were trained, you were fit, you were, that's why she liked you. Yes, you weren't available 24 hours after work. Maybe some fighters, they go to work. Oh, they're going to spend every single weeknight with their girlfriend. I thought that's a huge mistake. Have 1 or 2 days for her on the weekend. Maybe Saturday and Sunday, and then maybe one weeknight or whatnot, or have her do weights. Some fighters are really smart. Tell, hey, go do the boxing classes, or no contact boxing class while I do my jiu-jitsu. Those guys are the smartest. Share the interests. You're both fit, then you go out to dinner. What you manage your relationship. But the second you give up, like I've seen too many sacrificed potential great athletes, and also just guys who maybe they weren't the greatest athletes, maybe they were not going to become professional fighters, maybe they were never going to even become black belt. However, they severely deteriorated their health by getting fat and lazy, and psychologically, man, just psychologically. They come back, they're like, hey, I've been gone for 3 years. I would have been purple belt by now. I would have been brown belt by now. I lost all this time. These guys that I used to crush now are crushing me. They're so far ahead of me. It's just psychologically defeating. That's why, I'm always warning these young kids, once you get into a relationship, be smart, be reasonable. All right, what else we got here? Guys, we're going to have to end it up. I'm going to do 2 more questions, and we're going to wrap it up. Coach, I love you. That's from Omaris. Omaris, right back at you. Thank you very much. Oh, we do have super chats. Let me do these super chats. In my life, when I chose the path of least resistance, how do I turn those past weak points into efficient fuel sources, strengthen my career? Seems like they've done nothing but facilitate negative self-talk. How do I turn? I think what you're trying to ask me, Reese, is how do I turn a weakness into a strength? Well, that's a good question. But look, you don't want to necessarily, first of all, you want to cultivate your strengths. Number 1, cultivate your strengths. What do you have a talent for? Do you have a talent for athletics? Do you have a talent for academia? Are you a very intelligent person? Don't necessarily go out there and try to become a professional arm wrestler, okay? Don't do that. If you're into MMA, if you're a very smart person into MMA, maybe you become a coach. Maybe you have more success as a coach than a fighter. Maybe you have more success in academia. Are you somebody who's I don't know, you're a great talker? Maybe you become a psychologist. Maybe you start something, maybe you become an author. Are you good with words? Find what you're naturally good at. Get in that domain. Take that superpower you're born with. Go in that domain, and in that domain, eliminate all weaknesses. Okay, so if you're not very naturally athletic, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna attack that weakness, and I'm gonna go try to win a CrossFit Games, you're gonna train really, really like your entire life. You're gonna try to beat that weak. You're gonna go so all in that. You're gonna end up in the 10% best maybe. But you'll never become the number 1 best. To be the number 1 best, you have to have some natural talent. So, for instance, if you look at the top 5 in the world at anything, okay, let's take MMA. Those guys worked as hard, maybe harder than the top 10 or the top 15. But those guys also have with them a talent. Maybe they have incredible eyes, like their reflexes are incredible. Maybe they have a long reach. Maybe they have an incredible chin. They just have natural chin. It's not because they're not in the top 5 because they worked a lot harder than the guy who's number 8. Not necessarily. I've seen guys in number 8 work way harder than the guy who's number 1. Okay? Now, it is the case that the guy who worked number 1 also outworked everybody else, but it's rare. Oftentimes, there is a talent involved. There is. Okay? So that's just my opinion. Find out what your superpower is, get in that world, and from there, work on your weaknesses. Please, can you talk about the Yemen crisis? A plea to everyone here to donate. A reliable charity is crisisaid.com, I assume. Biggest humanitarian crisis, a plea here for everyone to donate, help save innocent lives. That's from Prince Ruh. Prince Ruh, I donate on the regular, my friend, and humanitarian causes, they're all great causes. If it is a legitimate place to donate, I'm all for it. So for those of you who want to donate, please do. Okay, another guy has to go time out here. That was more of a comment, so I'm going to do one last one. What else we got here? One other guy gets kicked out. Look at that. Free boot out the door. We have the Mind of Ray Ray. Hey, Mind of Ray Ray. Good to see you again. I think you mean Hoist Gracie. So the Mind of Ray Ray asks, would the BJJ skills that Hoist Gracie had in UFC 1 still be considered black belt level today? I think yes, but if you put him in the level of black belts we have today, like if I put him against a Rafa Mendes or Marcelo Garcia, it wouldn't be pretty. Okay, it wouldn't be pretty. Do you mean the black belts in MMA we have today? I think that he would get done. Like, I hate to say it. Okay, I gotta watch my words here, but you understand what I mean. I think today it's normal, guys. It's really normal. Like if we took the best baseball players of yesterday, again, I don't know much about baseball. Okay, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I think the vast majority of them will get outdone by the baseball players we have today. The vast majority of them. If you took the football players of yesterday, I think the vast majority of them would get outdone by the football players we have today. It's just that we have better ways of training now, and we start training earlier. All right, guys, I'm going to try to do one more here. I'm going to try to finish on a fun one here. Okay, I think today is the record for guys getting kicked out. Kevin King, let me see. I missed your super chat. My apologies, Mr. King. I just saw here from Shield 5 your opinions on Rogan's Alpha Brain and Shroom Tech. I haven't tried the Shroom Tech. I've tried the Alpha Brain. I like it. Like I always say, guys, I take supplements, but I cycle them. I believe that in my personal opinion, I've talked about this before, so I'm just going to give you a quick one, quick summation. I just take stuff I cycle my supplements. I buy a bunch of supplements and I just take them kind of at random every so often. I believe that, somebody who's training really, really hard all the time, he does need stuff that he might not know he needs. And it's kind of a trial and error type thing. But I do take Alpha Brain every so often. Okay. Mr. King, I missed it. I apologize. I'm going to try to end on one more fun one here. All right, let's see. Whitaker versus Gastelum. That's from Sina. Okay, let's end on that. That was a fantastic question. I'm tempted to do a whole breakdown of this, but I wouldn't because I've trained with both men and quite a bit. I've trained with both men quite a bit, so I don't want to go too personal, with the stuff that they're doing. I know fighters are sensitive to that, but I don't train with them anymore. But it's an intriguing fight. I'll tell you why. They're both really incredible athletes. Like Whitaker he's got power, man. The kid's got power. Not just in his punching power, but his double leg, his sprawl. He's a great athlete, man. He's a phenomenal athlete. I trained with him when he was really, really young. I'm assuming his athleticism, it looks like it's developed even more. Like his obviously he went up a weight class. He's much. I think incidentally, I think his weight cuts to 170 were way too much. Like arguably, like if you had to tell me, and I've worked with countless fighters, top 5 worst weight cuts you've ever seen. Top 5 worst weight cutters, like not worst weight cutters, like guys who tried their best, but it was just too tight of a weight cut. Whitaker would be in that top 5. I promise you. Whitaker, like his weight cuts were bad. Like they were tough. Weight cuts. But he's such a great athlete. He's got, he's got the heart. He's got the athleticism. He's got the skills. He's got the brains. He's a smart kid. He's got the courage. He's got some. Obviously, he's champion. Gastelum also is a very athletic guy, very powerful guy. He's like a block of muscle. So very similar to Yoel, but smaller, in my opinion. I've never trained with Yoel, so I'm just assuming here. I've never worked with Yoel. I've never wrestled Yoel. Thank God. It's a guy I would never want to lock horns with. But I feel like he's that kind of athlete. And I've drilled with Gastelum. He's a block of cement, man. He's a block of cement. Like he's a powerful guy. And I think he's going to be a little bit smaller than Whitaker. I have a feeling he's going to be like when you size them up, when you finally see them face to face on fight night, like fighting, he's going to see him a little bit smaller. If he's going to beat Whitaker, he's going to have to be quicker. He's going to have to be quicker. He's not going to outmuscle Whitaker. I just don't think he outmuscles Whitaker. And I'm ultimately picking Whitaker. However, Gastelum's got that power, man. He's got that power. He's a block of ice. He's a block of cement. Tough fight to call, but I would pick Whitaker. If you guys are putting me against the wall here, I'm going to pick Whitaker, but Gastelum's going to have to be quick, man. He's going to have to beat him standing. Like, takedowns are not going to be much of a factor, because if he takes Whitaker down, Whitaker's just going to get back up. He's just going to keep getting up. I don't think it's too much of a factor unless either fighter gets hurt. And then, of course, you can finish it off on the ground. And kind of, if you hurt a fighter, it's a different game. But let's say, like, as a primary strategy, I'm going to take you down and control you and ground and pound you. It's not going to work for either guy. Okay, it's not really their style. Of course, if I hurt you, I can always sub you. I can always control you on the ground. If I hurt you, let's say you're hanging by a thread, and I can finish it on the ground. That's not that was plan B. I hurt you standing up, and then I beat you on the ground. Okay, that could happen on the ground. However, as a primary, like, he's not going in there like with a Damian Maia strategy. Okay, so if that makes sense. He's gonna have to be quicker. He's gonna have to counter Whitaker. Whitaker's got more tools. He's got more tools, and I think he's just too much. Like, standing up is going to be a higher pace. He's got more tools, and he's got a great chin, Whitaker. So he's got the higher pace, the better cardio, the better like output, more variety. He's gonna have more kicks, more knees, more elbows. He's gonna be more creative. Whereas Gastelum is mainly a puncher. And what else would I say? He's got that heart, that chin, that he's more durable. Higher pace, more variety, more durable. And he has more 5-round experience, if I remember correctly. He's got way more 5-round experience. So I'm picking Whitaker. Okay, guys, with that said, I want to bid you guys a good day. Thank you again, all of you, for your birthday wishes. The guys who have wished me happy birthday. It is my birthday. Thank you very much for the birthday wishes. I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you very much for liking and sharing, and see you again soon.